Hey everyone, welcome. So, in this explainer, we're going to be looking at how the totally invisible forces of cultural context essentially dictate leadership success. It's like a hidden operating system. We're mentally stepping right off the plane and diving into a really fascinating study. And let me tell you, we are going to bust some major assumptions today about how we all work together. But first, let me hook you with a question, one that sparks literally endless debate in boardrooms and business schools around the world. Do men and women actually lead differently? It's a huge question, right? Well, instead of relying on opinions or, stereotypes, we're going to use hard statistical data from a very specific, highly contextualized culture, the Bahamas, to find the actual scientific answer. No guesswork here, just the facts. Okay, but before we get to the numbers, we really need to understand what it is we're actually measuring. Dutch cultural anthropologist Geert Hofstede brilliantly defines culture as the collective programming of the mind, which differentiates the members of one human group or category from those of another. Think about that. Collective programming. This is a massive point. Expatriate managers often fail spectacularly in new countries because they completely miss this invisible programming. They try to lead a new team using their own software, basically, and things quickly fall apart because, well, they aren't speaking the same underlying cultural language. All right, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the global culture clash. Second, task versus relationship. Third, inside Bahamian culture. Fourth, the leadership data. And finally, takeaways for managers. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The global culture clash. Context is everything. So, to understand why global communication totally breaks down, we have to look at the work of anthropologist Edward Hall. There's a direct, undeniable contrast in how different parts of the world communicate. High-context places like the Bahamas, Japan, or India communicate entirely differently than low-context places like the US or the UK. In low-context cultures, communication is explicit, clear, literal. What is meant is what is said. But in high-context cultures, communication is way less verbally detailed. There's this deep, subliminal understanding. Often, what is left unsaid matters just as much, if not more, than the actual words being spoken. I mean, imagine a manager from a low-context culture just barking literal orders at a high-context team. You can easily see how that clash happens instantly, right? Section 2. Task versus relationship. Defining leadership orientations. Okay, let's establish the two fundamental ways leaders influence their teams on a day-to-day basis. On one side, we've got task behavior. This is strict, top-down communication. It's the leader explaining exactly what to do, when to do it, where, and how. Then, on the other side, we have relationship behavior. This one is collaborative. It's joint communication, where the leader really focuses on providing socio-emotional support. So which one works better? Well, as you might guess, that depends entirely on the cultural programming of the people you're actually leading. Section 3. Inside Bahamian culture, the context for the data. Now, looking at the 700 beautiful islands of the Bahamas, the absolute crucial economic point here is that 50% of the entire Bahamian gross domestic product is generated by tourism, mostly from the U.S., and this industry employs roughly half of the entire country's workforce in a highly service-oriented dynamic. That's massive. Economic survival here is deeply, deeply intertwined with human interaction and hospitality. And adding to that economic reality is their unique social structure. The Bahamas is a collectivistic society. That means the group and the extended family are the primary units of social organization. Because it's a small, closely connected country where people actually know their neighbors, teamwork and social cohesion aren't just, corporate buzzwords. They're literally a way of life. The culture naturally, almost automatically, leans heavily toward collaboration. Section 4. The leadership data. The big reveal. Okay, here's where it gets really good. Researchers surveyed 211 individuals in Nassau using Peter Northhouse's style questionnaire to test our initial assumptions about how this specific culture prefers to lead and be led. Now, just so you understand the results we're about to look at, the scoring uses a 1 to 5 scale, where a score between 45 and 50 is considered very high, scaling all the way down to very low. Just keep this rubric in mind as we look at how the Bahamian respondents actually scored. Wow, look at this gap. It is absolutely fascinating. When we average out the respondents, Bahamians score a 37.5 on tasks, putting them in the moderately high range. But check out their relationship score. It comes in at 41.86. That places them firmly in the high range. And the statistical t-test used in the study confirms this is a highly significant difference.
This essentially proves a distinct cultural preference for socio-emotional support and joint communication over simply directing tasks.
All right, so we've definitively proven the culture is relationship first. But we've got to return to our opening question, the one that causes so much friction and assumption in the workplace. Do Bahamian men and women actually score differently from one another?
Well, here's the punchline. The male relationship score is 41.74, and the female relationship score is 41.89. They are virtually identical. No way, right? The statistical analysis proves there is absolutely no significant difference between genders when it comes to relationship orientation in this culture. None.
And looking at the task side, we see the exact same phenomenon playing out. The male task score is 36.91, and the female task score is 37.66. The scores are incredibly similar, completely busting the myth that gender somehow dictates leadership style in this context. In the Bahamas, your cultural programming, that deeply shared emphasis on connection and community, entirely overrides any assumed gender differences in how you lead. It's all about the culture.
Section 5. Takeaways for managers. Applying the data.
So, now that we've busted the gender myth and proven the cultural orientation, what does this actually mean for an international manager stepping off a plane in Nassau tomorrow morning? Well, expatriates must adapt to this high-context culture. You really need to lean into group cohesion by leveraging group-based training. You should prioritize knowledge sharing because, honestly, this culture naturally supports peers helping peers. You absolutely must focus heavily on building deep relationships with vendors and customers because transactions here, they are deeply personal. Ultimately, effective leaders stay in control by managing with a balance of both behaviors, but they have to understand that in the Bahamas, how you interact is just as important as what you achieve. So I am going to leave you with this final thought. How does your collective programming shape your leadership style? It is so easy to assume our way of leading is the only right way. But as the data clearly shows, it's often just the way we were programmed by our surroundings. I challenge you to reflect on your own hidden cultural biases the next time you step into a new team.